Hi guys, Steve Girardi here. Welcome to Steve Strings. Today I'm going to show you how to do decoupage. So decoupage is where you take some kind of paper image and you place it on a solid object. In this case, a cigar box. So this is a stomp box that I made, and I'm going to decoupage this image on top of it. Now, of course, you can do this for both stomp boxes or for cigar box guitars, or you can do it on any kind of cigar box you want. Let's say you want to just do it to hold things in. You might want to put something decorative on. You can do it for that as well. One thing to keep in mind is if you're doing decoupage on a musical instrument is that it may affect the resonance of the surface. And so decoupage is really best for things that you plan on electrifying. There are a few things you're going to need in order to do decoupage. The first of these is, of course, the graphic images that you're going to be using. Another thing you're going to need is going to be some clear enamel spray. And I'll show the image here. Another thing you're going to need is Mod Podge. Mod Podge is the sort of glue-like material that you spread on to hold it on. And the other thing you're going to need, of course, is the box or whatever that you're doing it with. And finally, you're going to need something to spread around the Mod Podge. And that can be a brush or it can be a sponge. So let's go ahead and do it. The first step in the process is to take the image that you're going to be Mod Podging, and you're going to take the clear enamel spray and you're going to spray it. And the point of this is so that the clear coat will soak into the paper. You're then going to flip the paper over and spray the opposite side after the first side has dried. And the point of that is so that the paper will absorb the clear coat so that later on when you put the Mod Podge on, basically it won't want to absorb any of the water from the Mod Podge, because if it absorbs water from the Mod Podge, it can bubble, and that can be problematic. So again, the point of spraying the paper is to essentially plasticize the paper so it becomes non-absorbent. I positioned my graphic here face down on the table so I can spray the back side of it first. I just have some pebbles here because I'm outside. It's a little bit breezy. I want it to blow away. I'm going to be using this matte clear coat, and I'm going to go ahead basically and seal this paper from the back side first. Here we go. There we go. And you can see that clear coat is sinking down into the paper and it's wanting to kind of expand. So this will help seal it. Once we let that dry, we'll turn it over and then we'll spray the opposite side. If you need to, you can do more than one coat of this, but that's basically the process. You can see that this is now dried, and I should say I did put a second light coat on that. You can't see through it anymore. So now it's time to turn this over and spray the opposite side the exact same way. All right, here we go. We'll spray this again. Again, I'm using the same stuff here. And that's it. Now, one of the reasons for spraying this also, you should note, is that way it locks in the ink, because this is an inkjet printing, so it locks that ink in so that it won't run when you end up putting the Mod Podge on when it gets wet. Again, you can see the paper kind of swelled a little bit right there, but again, we'll let this dry, so that way when we come on and apply the Mod Podge to attach this to the box, it won't swell at all. I've applied a second coat and allowed it to dry, so now it's go ahead and time to pick this up. And I should say that it's ready when you can tell that it's no longer tacky to the touch. It should be fully dried before you try to remove this. Also, typically the the spray actually goes all the way through the paper, and so it can actually stick to the table underneath of it. So just be aware of that and cautious about that. And that's partly why you want to make sure your table is clean before you start. And I always do the non-inked side first to start it off. So I'm going to go ahead and take this inside and let it continue to fully dry and cure. And then I can go ahead and cut this to size and then use the Mod Podge to put it on a box. I'm back inside now and getting ready to put the Mod Podge on. So let's review what I have here for supplies and equipment. First of all, I have the paper that's now cured. I'm going to be cutting that to size. And fortunately, I have this little paper cutter. It's used for scrapbooking. My wife happened to have this, so I'll put that to good use. If I didn't have that, the old-fashioned way, scissors works just fine to cut it to size. I should say that when I sized this originally in PowerPoint, I cut it to the exact size to cover the writing on the box that I wanted to do. But when they printed it, I didn't have ink here, so I printed it at another store. And so it was just slightly too small. So I'm going to be using a Sharpie here to just sort of darken those little pieces of the writing that are going to be sticking beyond the edges of where I'm going to be cutting. And that shouldn't be noticeable. Of course, I have the Mod Podge, and I have a roller. Now, a roller isn't absolutely required, but it is nice for getting it flat without any chance of marring the paper. The other thing you can do when you're putting the Mod Podge on is you can basically just flatten it out with your fingers, because you're flattening out the dry side of the paper, not the wet side of the paper. So let's go ahead and I'll change the camera angle out to show how I cut this. All right, I'm set up now to cut the paper. And again, if you haven't used one of these paper cutters before, basically it's a ruler with a little cutting edge that you slide up and down to basically slice through the paper. It's as simple as that. So what you do is you basically just make sure that you line the paper up in the correct alignment. And again, this ruler helps you do that. And then you just slide the little blade down the paper and it cuts it. And I don't want to have any white on the edge of this, so I can, if I need to err, I will err on the side of caution and actually take away some of the ink if I need to. But I think that's about in the right location. So now I'll just go ahead and slide it down. Let's see. Yep, looks right. And that's it. That's the first cut. And we'll just do that all the way around. There we have it. It's as simple as that. So I now have the two things cut out to the right dimensions. All right, here's the box I'm going to be decoupaging. And again, this is a stomp box. And I'm going to be giving this stomp box away in collaboration with Porta Studios with an instrument giveaway. And as I mentioned, you can see here that right now you can just see the writing peeking out from the edge of this, because when this printed, it did not get printed the right size. So what I'll be doing is just taking the Sharpie and just darkening that print there. That should be poking out around the edge. And hopefully that will not show. So let's try that. All right, I'm gonna let that dry and come back and put another coat on. Hopefully that won't be an issue. Another thing you could do if you wanted to have a solid paint, what I could have done was sanded this and then painted that black. But I was thinking this would be able to cover it up, so that's a little faux pas I'll need to work on fixing. But the next step, like I said, is after I make sure that ink is where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and get the Mod Podge out and get ready to put this on. So I have all the things I need to get started here. I should say that what I have done was I took a pencil here and I put a small mark in the corner of where I want this image to go. That way I can position it there and have it in the right spot when I put the decoupage on. Because this stuff is like glue, and if you get it stuck in the wrong position, you might have to live with that. So again, I'm going to be using the Mod Podge. I'm going to be using a little sponge brush, and I'm going to be using a roller to put it in place. And the key here to get this a good result and not have it bubble, one is we already sprayed it, and that'll certainly help. The other is on the side that you're going to be putting the first coat on, you'll be sticking on, you put a very thin coat on. Just because all we're trying to do is get it to be tacked down. You don't want to have a lot of squeeze out from it. So basically you're going to be taking just a damp sponge and basically just making a pass along the whole sponge or the whole image to make sure you have contact everywhere. Then you're going to turn it over, put it in place, make sure you align it to the little markers you've made, or that I've made in this case, and then you're going to take the roller and start in the middle and then roll out from the middle to make sure you get everything nice and flat. And then you're basically going to leave it alone, let it dry for, let's say, 15 or 20 minutes, because if you come back and put more Mod Podge on when it's still damp, you're adding moisture and it's more apt to swell, even though it's been hopefully sealed with the clear coat that you put on it earlier. But let's go ahead and get started. As I said, the key here is to get complete coverage, but not excess Mod Podge. And this Mod Podge is kind of like a thin glue. Now you can see how the paper is already curling. Again, it's trying to absorb that water, which makes it want to curl. So let me go ahead and see if I can get this in position without messing it up. And there's a corner marker. And there's another corner marker. And another one. So go ahead and kind of make sure it's where you want it. Right now it's still a little bit movable and you can get it to where you want it. If you don't have a roller, you can just do what I'm doing now, which is just sort of flatten it like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll that out. And as I do that, you'll get some squeeze out from it, and that's fine. That way you'll know you'll have the glue or the Mod Podge all the way to the corners. And you may see that some of this Mod Podge is coming off on the other side. That's fine, because we're going to be putting a coat on in a minute anyway. Alrighty, so it looks like it's pretty much rolled out. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wipe off my brush, wipe off the roller while we let this dry. If you have any of the Mod Podges kind of, mounded up on the sides and you want to keep a relatively smooth surface, you can wipe some of that kind of smooth now so you don't have lumps in it. But we're going to be coming back in a moment and putting Mod Podge over the entire surface, so the whole thing will be covered. This first coat of Mod Podge has dried for, a couple hours now. I went and had dinner and did some other things and came back to it. So I'm going to go ahead and apply a second coat. I can see now that it's not tacky at all. It is basically completely dried. The plan here is now to basically cover the entire top of this with Mod Podge so that it's a uniform finish. I should say that the Mod Podge comes in different types. There's gloss, there's matte. This one says gloss. I don't want to have a gloss finish, so when I'm done, I'm going to come back and spray it with a clear coat in a couple of days after the Mod Podge has fully cured. That way it'll have a matte finish and it'll be set. My intent here is to basically put on at least one layer. That may be enough because, again, this box has already been sprayed with a clear coat before I put this on. And so now basically we're just wanting to get a uniform finish across here using the Mod Podge. So let's go do that. It looks like we have a pretty uniform coat there, and you may see that this is not necessarily a smooth surface, and that's okay because I actually want to have a bit of a textured surface so that if we want to rub on this stomp box and get some reverberation, we can do that. This can actually be dried thoroughly and then sanded and repeated several times if you want to get a really smooth coat. I'm just using this right now just to basically seal this paper, to seal the surface, and I'll come back again after this cures in a couple days or so, and I'll go ahead and hit it with maybe a few coats of the clear coat spray like I did on the other side, and that should basically seal this and make it set and ready to go. Hopefully you've seen from this little instructional video that applying Mod Podge to a paper graphic and a cigar box is not difficult at all. So if you're wanting to add some different kinds of graphics to a cigar box instrument, or you're making, say, a jewelry box out of a cigar box, using decoupage is one way to go to bring some extra character to the box. If you've used Mod Podge or decoupage before on some instruments, I'd love to hear about your experience and what you thought about it. I hope this was useful for you. Thanks for watching.